You know, I cannot see you, and that's the fault of my iPad, but it only shows me 6 people, so it's very frustrating.
I can see myself and the board members and one of my clients, and I also see the designer, the building designer.
What's
And I see John Salzillo. So again, my name is Mark Lanza. I'm the attorney for the applicant. The applicant is FOD LLC. Emily Miller is the principal. She is participating in this Zoom meeting. Gregory Smalley is the building designer. On our team, we also have a civil engineer, RIM Engineering. However, nobody can be here from RIM Engineering this evening. Hopefully we'll be able to deal with all the issues without anyone from RIM.
Excuse me, Attorney Lanza, who is John Salzillo again?
I'm the builder with Anodyne Construction.
Okay, thank you.
I should say that I can see the chair, Ms. Collins, but I cannot hear her. I see her lips moving, but I cannot hear her. She could be muted.
Yeah, so is that
okay?
Typically, we start by diving right into the correspondence and going through the department head comments and then asking for a presentation from the applicant.
Right.
I know there's a little bit of a history here, and we've all done a lot, some reading in advance of this meeting, and so we probably can't read everything into the record, but let's just, I don't know if Joe, you want to, and Jen can share at least the list of correspondence up on the screen.
Yeah, I see it now. That I have. Okay, this is a memorandum to Sean Burke from Joshua Rienke, engineer, and Richard Alves, town engineer of Mansfield. Subject is site plan application, 19 Knight Way, proposed Montessori school. Note, new site plans and drainage calculations submitted by RIM Engineering dated 11/15/20. The engineering division provides the following comments and questions. The project will, number one, the project will result in a land disturbance of 1 or more acres. Therefore, an NPDES, NOI, and SWPPP must be submitted to the town for approval. Provide a detail of the, number two, provide a detail of the proposed oil and grit separators. Number three, only 24 inch of cover is proposed for over CB number 1. Accordingly, the pipe materials should be changed to ductile iron or blue brute. Number 4, provide a detail of the proposed underground infiltration system that shows the following: A, proposed cleanouts; B, filter fabric across top and sides, not the bottom; C, the 100-year flood elevation; D, the inlet connections and their scour protection measures; E, provide manufacturer specifications that show the proposed cover over the Cultec 150 XL HD system is allowable. 5, while the drainage calculations show the infiltration system will contain the 100-year storm event, we recommend an emergency overflow be provided. 6, provide details on the proposed swale, i.e. grassed riprap. 7, the proposed water site should be a minimum of 2 inches. 8, provided a note for final stamped as-built plan. And 9, the septic system was not part of our review, but note it will require Board of Health approval. 10, we received a 3-sheet site plan set for the project. The third sheet appears to be a reduced size version of the second sheet, please adjust the scale accordingly, 30 scale to 40 scale. Questions. 1, does the 50-foot roadway easement permit utilities to be constructed within? 2, where is the existing septic field for house number 19? 3, have the BVW lines shown on the plan been approved by the Mansfield Conservation Agent? 4, what is the proposed paving cross-section for the driveway parking areas? 5, is a separate fire service required for this project? 6, will an on-site hydrant be required due to the building's distance from the road? That's it. Okay, so this is to the planning board. It's a memorandum to the planning board from Sean Burke, Director of Planning. Subject to revised 19 Nightway site plan. On December 2nd, 2020, the applicant for the above referenced site plan submitted a new site plan designed by a new engineering firm. The new plan contains considerably more information about the site and its precursor. The major differences are as follows. Can you move it up, Jen? Number 1, the plan now shows the footprint location of a proposed future building. Number 2, the access driveway is now proposed to be a 24-foot wide asphalt road with Cape Cod curbing. Number 3, the driveway and parking area now have a stormwater management system that includes 2 catch basins and an accompanying stormwater infiltration system. Number 4, the parking area now includes a handicap parking space. 5, in addition to photometric plan, a photometric plan has been submitted. The lighting plan shows the location of 3 light fixtures illuminating the access drive and the parking area. 6, drainage calculations for the site have been submitted to the town engineer. 7, the new plan is far more complete than the original submission. It is thus easier to understand. With the addition of lighting and drainage, it will be, in my opinion, safer for users of the site. 8, the proposed light fixture nearest the entrance driveway to Nightway should be relocated to the opposite or westerly side of the access driveway and should utilize a house shield to prevent light trespass onto abutting properties. 9, the new plan addresses many of the issues raised during review of the original plan. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me.
Now, who was that, Joe?
That was Sean to us.
Okay.
Now this is to Robert Blackman from the electrical engineering department, I think.
Which cars? Yeah.
The light department,
Yeah, the light department. Okay, there you go.
or that's Chris Cox.
The Mansfield Municipal Electric Department has the following comments regarding the proposed project. 1, only single-phase electric service is available at this location. 2, it is unclear if electric service to the existing house on the property will be maintained. 3, MMED has existing conduit going to a riser pole on the property. If this conduit cannot be used for primary cable, the applicant will need to run new concrete encased conduit from the pad mount transformer on Knight's Way to the property. This will need to be investigated to determine if it is feasible. 4, electric requirements of the applicant are unknown at this time. To avoid delays, the applicant should contact MMED as soon as possible. 5, MMED charges for work to be done to extend electrical service. If you have any questions, please contact me, Chris Cox, electrical engineer. Did I just read this? No, this is a new one. This is to Sean Burke from Joshua Renicky, the engineer, and Rick Alves, November 9, 2020.
This might be an older one, Joe. Dates back to the 1st of November.
The next memos are on the original site plan application plan.
So would we need to read these, Jen?
No, you don't need to read them, Joe, because these aren't really germane to tonight's discussion because this was a prior plan done by a surveyor.
Okay, all right, so
Thank you.
I think that's it then, right?
Great, so we can move on to Mike Lanza and the client.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can you hear me okay?
I can, thank you.
Okay. You mentioned, Madam Chairman, that you've heard a lot about this property, this project. It certainly has a history in the town of Mansfield. But when I say the project, I'm referring to the project that's depicted on the plan as the larger building that is not before the board this evening. What's before the board this evening is a much smaller building.
Mhm.
The building that ultimately built will be about 17,000 square feet. The one that's the subject of tonight's site plan application is about 1,200 square feet. It's a rather small building. It is designed to be used for up to 30 enrollees in a childcare facility. There may be some incidental elementary education that goes on there. Associated with it is a driveway, a parking area, all shown on the up-to-date site plan.
Mhm.
And there's lots of other details, and I realize you received lots of information about utilities and other matters that really aren't within the scope of the board's review for a site plan for a Dover Amendment use, but it's all useful information. We can respond to some of the questions about those issues that, have been raised. However, our view is they're really not within the board's purview. Now,
Well, no, just to stop you there, the site plan process, you present your plan and we get to ask questions. The Dover permitted use certainly puts a weight on the scales, but it's not a full exemption from going through the process of presenting to the board and listening to questions.
yeah, and I just said that we will gladly answer the questions, even though many of them, for example, the size of the water line, the location of the fire hydrant, the electrical service, none of that is really within the board's purview.
So the fire suppression and public safety is of no concern in the state of Massachusetts, I'm afraid.
It is
No,
absolutely.
We do need to actually we have to get the basics. We need to hear from our department heads and hear how you respond. Those are important to us.
And again, we're not suggesting that you shouldn't, and you are hearing from them. What I want to be clear about is when it comes time to make a decision, the board's scope of review is pretty constrained under the Dover Amendment. The state law says you can impose or apply regulations that are reasonable concerning bulk and height of structures, yard sizes, lot area, setbacks, open space.
I'm sorry, we've read your memo. Why don't you present your plan?
Okay, well, you have the plan before you. The only issue in the context of those regulations that isn't addressed specifically in the town zoning regulations on those subjects is parking. There is no provision in the zoning bylaws that says or specifies how many parking spaces is appropriate for an educational nonprofit use or a child care facility. So what we did was we designed a parking area, a paved parking area with proper drainage and we need proper lighting that provides for 5 parking spaces. There will only be 3 staff people in this small facility, and there will be 1 parking space that's handicapped for handicapped vehicle. So that's all we really have to say about parking. We feel it's adequate for the very small number of staff people and the limited use of the facility, again, being a facility that's only 1,200 square feet in size. As to all the other areas that are subject of permissible regulation, the facility and the use completely comply with the use provisions of the zoning bylaws, the bulk and height of structures, the yard sizes, lot area, setbacks, open space, and building coverage. There is, as you know, there's no frontage for the lot, no street frontage. The lot is a short distance from the very end of Knight Way. There's a 55-foot wide access way that provides access to the lot. As you probably know from reading the documents I sent, there have been 2 lawsuits over that easement. And one, the issue was whether or not it existed. The second was whether or not it was adequate for access for the larger facility, the 72,000 square foot facility that will have up to 200 enrollees. Obviously, that would be more than adequate for this small facility. And again, the adequacy of the easement is something that's already been decided and addressed. Now, the driveway, the width of the driveway is 24 feet. The driveway that provides access to the smaller facility that's before you this evening veers off from the driveway that will provide access to the larger facility when that is constructed. So some of it will remain in place and then it will continue beyond that facility. When the main facility is constructed, when that time comes, of course, we'll be back before the board for site plan review and approval. The total square footage of the main facility and the one that's before you this evening will not exceed 17,000 square feet, which is the size of the main facility. The total enrollees in both buildings will not exceed 200. So I just wanted to make that point about the relationship between this small facility and the larger one when it comes. But again, the only thing that's before the board this evening is the smaller one. Again, you have a drainage plan for the parking lot. You have a photometric plan for the lighting. And I think we've provided everything that the board and the staff has asked for, and we can answer the specific questions that have been posed by other town officials if you'd like.
Great, thank you very much. Do we have questions from the board?
Do we have any pictures of or any type of plan of the proposed buildings at all, other than what I saw in the plan? It was just this typical layout right here on this plan.
I'm going to defer to the building designer, Mr. Smalley, who's in the meeting, to respond to that.
Yes, we had provided to you a floor plan, sections, and a rendering of the building that should be in that set that you're looking at.
I didn't see those. So
I don't see it in the email. Jen, is that something that's separate, or which document is that in?
A set of this plan was dropped off for everybody December 2nd, and it has the drawing in.
Yeah, those are the drain.
We have not received it.
Can you pull it up in the screen?
It was
That might
dropped off December 2nd.
If it's possible to share my screen, I can show that to you.
That would be great. That would help.
And how do we do that with? Okay. If someone can guide me to where share screen is, I will do that.
Jen, are you there do you have instructions for having him share the screen?
I've made Attorney Lanza a presenter.
Good.
He should.
I don't have the plans. It's really Mr. Smalley that should be able to share.
Oh, I'm sorry.
With the board.
Stand by. Okay, Mr. Smalley is the presenter now.
Let's see what we do now. Find the right screen. Okay, is that showing up for everybody?
No,
No?
Okay.
We see a document, but it's not
it's not, it's the,
it's not the building.
It's not the rendering of the
Okay.
building referring to.
No, it's not.
This is always the fun part of these, isn't it?
I know the remote technology, we have to be patient with it because it's
One day we will figure this out.
it's not as good as being in the same room.
And by then, it'll be
No,
a COVID vaccine.
Greg, you have to have it up on your screen in order for it to show for everybody else. So whatever's showing on your screen is what everyone's going to see.
Right, and that is what I have there.
Yeah.
Vacation.
I'm in Italy.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you're seeing Rome. Hang on.
Rome's good. We like Rome.
Been there twice.
I know, if I keep this screen down to there, we'll be all set. Hang on one second. Okay. Now are you seeing a building instead of Rome?
Yeah, but it's very small, so.
Hmm. Okay. Oops. Trying to just switch screens for you all, so if you
Can you
bear with me
expand?
here, I'll try.
There you go.
I didn't know there was going to be a quiz, sorry.
We will. You've been patient and we will be patient too.
Well, we'll make it all work one of these days. I've got it in front of me. I just can't get it to the screen that you people are seeing.
So you're moving it in the right direction. Keep moving
Okay.
it the way you were.
Okay.
Yep, perfect.
So,
And
does
then
There.
zoom in just a tad to get to like maybe 50 to 60%, and I think you're good.
Okay. If I go that big, I have to scroll back and forth to show you the entire floor plan.
Yeah, this ain't working out too good here, because it's like, you can't see any numbers, you can't see anything.
There we go.
So that's the floor plan. As Mr. Lanza was saying, a relatively small building. It's about 1,100 square feet net, about 1,200 square feet gross. It is a large open area, 2 restrooms and a storage area. A simple floor plan, simple building. And it has a covered patio area of about 1,100 square feet. And that is open on all 3 sides, backs up to the building, and just continues the roof line out over that area. There's a section through the building, interior of the building, the open area outside under cover, a single pitched roof line. We're about 12 to 13 feet high back here, about 15 to 17 feet high out there. So certainly within residential standard for height and certainly area. And section going the other way, looking through it, same piece. This is looking in underneath the canopy in the covered area. There is cedar siding, some windows, operating windows to the bottom, fixed windows above. It's an overhead door to allow the activities inside to spill out to the covered area out in the front of it. An entry door and window on the corner.
You're saying this is a classroom?
This is designed to be as flexible a space as possible. It can be a maker space, a classroom, a place for small children.
It looks like a utility room to me.
Can ultimately be a garage if so needed when the main building is built. The entry side of the building from the parking lot side, cedar siding, some metal siding to complement that, a single entry door and 4-foot overhang to that side. Rendering of the building showing the metal siding, cedar siding, windows at the corner, and the roof over the outdoor learning area. A fairly straightforward building, not much to be seen or changed on it, frankly. The next two drawings I have here are the photometrics. If a question comes up on those, we can certainly talk about that.
So, thank you. Are there other specific questions from the board?
Yeah, but you're submitting this plan as a classroom for 10, 12 people, and it looks like a garage to me. I think you're trying to build a garage and supersede it so you can build a school later. That's in my opinion.
The building space is for a childcare facility. Childcare facilities are strictly regulated by the state. It wouldn't be able to be open and operate until the state inspects it and certifies it for a certain number of attendees. I don't know what else to say. That's the proposed use, and that's going to be.
Yeah, but I think you let the cat out of the bag. You said it could be a garage later. So you did say that, correct?
He did, but that's after it's closed and the main building is built.
Okay.
I'm not impressed.
Beth, I have a question.
It's following along the lines of the maker spaces that are being built in virtually all of the new schools across the state of Massachusetts. And it follows very closely with a STEM-based hands-on learning protocol, which encourages kids to go inside and out. It's facilitated best with an overhead door and a large covered area, which gives the teachers and the students the chance to move in and out of the building. Though the aesthetic changes, the fundamental function of the building doesn't.
Thank you. Are there any, Sharon, do you have a question?
Yeah, so on the original site plan where you're proposing to have the new future building, is all of those 13 acres, is that all land that you own? And that it then accommodates all of this?
Yes, it is owned. It's owned by FOD LLC, the applicant, subject to a life estate in favor of Brendan Knight on a 4.5 acre portion of the.
Wait, I'm sorry, attorney. I didn't catch the beginning of your statement.
It is owned. The deed says it's owned by FOD LLC. FOD is the applicant. And on the, I'm going to say it's the eastern, I could have my directions wrong here, 4.5 acres portion of the property, a woman named Brenda Knight, who's resided at 19 Knight Way for probably 45 years and has a house there, has a life estate in that part of the property. So she has an interest in the property. When her time is up, it will be, the remainder of the estate will vest in FOD LLC.
I see. Thank you.
But the house is there presently, right? And will remain?
Yes, for the foreseeable future.
Right, okay.
Okay, and what are the time plans for building the smaller building and then building the larger building?
I'm going to let Ms. Miller respond to that. Ms. Miller is the principal of FOD.
Hi. I'd like to get started on the smaller building as soon as possible. And given the fact that there is ongoing discussion about the larger building. I'm not really sure what the time frame for that is. I wish I had an answer to give you, but I don't.
Mhm. Thank you.
Beth, I had a question.
Okay.
Has a traffic impact study been done for, when this was first proposed as a larger project, now it's the smaller one, maybe with a larger one down the line? Has a traffic impact study been done for either of the designs, either the smaller one or a larger one?
Yes, for the larger one. If I can respond, Ms. Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
For the larger one, a traffic study had to be done because there was an issue in one of the 3 land court cases about whether or not the 50-foot wide easement was adequate to handle the traffic, that would be generated by the 17,000 square foot, 200 student enrollee facility. And the traffic study showed that it was more than adequate to handle the traffic generated by the facility, and the judge so found.
What did the traffic study opine about the public roadways and access to and from?
Same conclusion, and we can provide that that study to the board. It's in fact it's a public record because it was in the land court case.
Well, that's why I saw it in the land court case, that there was an expert that didn't say trips a day, what it would be on the road, what the intersection grades would be, at the intersection of Nightway out there, if any improvements would be needed or anything, and that's what I was curious about. So I'd really would love to be able to take a look at any traffic studies you guys have.
Yes, we did. We had a traffic study done by a well-known traffic expert, and then also an issue came up about queuing of motor vehicles when picking up and dropping off the enrollees at the larger facility. So we even have a separate, I'd call them a mini study on that particular issue. And again, in that case, the court found that there would be no problem with queuing, meaning backing up of motor vehicles from the property onto Nightway.
And I'm looking because in reading their decision on that, it sounds, they're leaving a lot that there could be improvements made if something didn't work, but really those improvements are only going to work if somehow it's conditioned in the approval of, these issues need to be addressed. It can't just be, I don't think he would write that in there saying, well, out of the kindness of their hearts, if there's an issue, they're gonna, improve, widen the roadway as he puts in his decision, or extend roadways on site, things like that. So I'd really just like to see it so we can kind of get a feel for things we might need to look for on site for improvements.
And again, I realize I'm repeating myself. That pertains to the larger facility, the 70,000 square foot facility for 200 enrollees at full enrollment.
Mm-hmm. I understand that. I understand this is the much smaller one, and the impact would be much less. But eventually, we're going to see that. We might as well have a whole picture in our head of what the site is going to look like.
Okay.
Can you speak to how the drop-off and pickup works just for this proposed facility for the 30 students?
Ms. Miller can very clearly and concisely explain that. Emily? I don't know if she's muted or.
No, I'm here now. The way that
for the smaller facility.
Okay. So the way that I have it now at the facility that I'm in, that has no queuing or driveway or anything, was worked out with Mansfield PD. There is a scheduled pickup and drop off for individual classes. And children are received from the vehicle and park in a car line queue, and also delivered back to their parents or caregivers in a car line queue. And it goes very, very smoothly. I have an actual traffic study done at our facility. I don't remember how many students were enrolled at the time, but it's far more than 30 that I can share with you that Jennifer Conley did. on site. So it's actual numbers based on enrollment at that time, which I think at least was 2 or 3 times more than what we're proposing. So that might be helpful for you.
Yeah, that might be helpful, definitely in addressing Mike Feck's question. Can you tell us how that car line queuing works on this site plan? Because I need to be oriented.
It hasn't been approved yet, but once it's approved, there'll be a queue in and out at certain times. I haven't done that yet because it hasn't been approved yet. But I mean, I've been doing this for 19 years. And as Judge Long said, been pretty efficient at it. And, you know, I can give that to you, but because the building doesn't exist, I haven't established that just yet. I have it established in the facility I'm at, and I have 68 students there, again, with no driveway or entryway, or I have a very small parking lot that is probably at 50% capacity right now, and it works. So
Where would the car line queue be? Would it be on this driveway that's shown?
it would be, so there are 2 driveways there. There's one to the residence, which is a long gravel drive, and then the one that I'm going to put in for that building. And so it would be in that paved area. There's 13 acres, so there's plenty of room if somebody else needs to.
I guess I'm just not seeing I'm seeing 5 parking spaces, but relative to those parking spaces, where would the cars drop off for the car line queue you described?
They would drop off and coming in, driving up to the building, turning around and going out. So I again, this hasn't been approved yet, so I don't have an exact line to give you.
Okay.
I guess, doesn't it make sense to do some sort of a circle or oval or something? It just doesn't look like there's enough room to queue and keep on going.
That's designed into the bigger plan for sure. Yeah, there's a big oval. Yep.
I see, but not into the smaller one, because I have this concern if the car line queue sweeping around and being right behind a bunch of parked cars, that means bringing the children past all the parked cars, and I'm not sure I'm having trouble imagining how that can work.
Yeah, I can easily work with the engineer on that. I mean, that's like I said, in the bigger design, that's designed in. There's a car line queue that goes all the way in front of the larger building. It is a circular, drive in, drive out situation.
Right. So everyone.
It's a larger number of vehicles because this was significantly smaller. I don't see it being a 30 student facility, but that's the maximum capacity. I see it probably more like 20, but I don't want to say 20 and then have somebody say you had 25.
But either way, you're not imagining that every parent parks and walks in. You're imagining a little bit of a drop-off loop.
Yep. Yeah, we don't have a situation where parents park and walk in now. We never have.
No, it takes more time.
Yeah, and it doesn't work well for children.
Would you have like a parent-teacher night or some other event where you might conceivably have a lot of people trying to visit the school at the same time?
I wouldn't do that at this site. I would do that at the site that I currently use and lease and pay taxes on. And, that's the main site right now. Okay. This is just an addition and necessary because of COVID and everything else right now.
I see. So if you don't envision your current operation moving, all of it moving to this site immediately, you imagine both that this is in addition to that.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
I think Diana had her hand up.
I had a similar question as Adrian. And then once the bigger facility is created, what is this current building you're looking at going to be utilized as?
So, so you're asking once the main building is constructed, what will this be? So when I first designed the big building, or when Greg first designed the big building, sorry, Greg, make a maker space was not even a concept. So makers being STEAM and STEM. And as I have met with other public and private school heads of schools who have either adapted or added spaces to their buildings, they love their maker space, but the one thing they've all said is it's crazy noisy because of 3D printers or laser cutters, or STEAM and STEM, for those of you who might not be aware, it's an acronym for science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. So that's the space, or music. And so in the end, when we get the bigger building built, that will be a standalone space for all of that and relieve the big building of the noise factor. Because everyone says they wish they had a standalone space. So I took that and was like, okay, we can do that.
Thank you.
Remind me again of the age range we're talking about for this building. I thought we said it was childcare and early elementary.
Yeah, well, down the road it would be early elementary students, but right now it's my primary. It would be my primary program probably. Okay. I'm licensed by the state, so like I said, they would have to come in and approve and license me and all of that, or as Mark said, I should say.
Will the space eventually be open to the public for rental if it is a maker space?
Probably.
I'm not sure if that's part of your plan or if we need to consider that as part of this discussion.
No, that's not part of my plan.
Okay. Fair enough. I can't see all the members of the board. Please chime in if you have a question, because I can't see raised hands. So, Sean, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are a number of unanswered department head comments, right?
Well, engineering had a number of them. I think that most of my comments were addressed with the new plan.
Good.
The original plan was somewhat bare bones.
Yeah, well, they responded to the questions and filled in some of the gaps, which is good. That's what we want to see.
Yes, so there's still some outstanding questions from engineering, which are technical in nature, giving elevations, cover over pipes.
Right.
The thing that they need the NEPADES permit, and they need the land clearing permit. Those are not local zoning regulations, and they do apply to a site that's being developed. So I think that's what Josh was mentioning when he was seeing the future building, and the 1 acre disturbance. So those issues need to be addressed through engineering.
Yes, and we will address all those questions in writing.
Perfect.
And send a copy to Mr. Burke and anybody else we need to. There are also questions raised by, I believe it was the engineer in the electric department. Again, even those are technical and really not site plan issues, why not? We'll answer them.
Beautiful.
That's what we're used to, is having them be answered.
We'll answer them.
I do have one more question about just the children on the site. Is there any kind of fencing that would keep children from, contained in some area of the site?
I'll let Ms. Miller respond to that.
So from a Montessori philosophy pedagogy standpoint, the outdoor environment is as important as the indoor environment. So people have asked me over and over again, why would you continue to bang your head against the wall to do this? And it's because it's 13 beautiful acres of outdoor natural environment where gardening and, that, again, very natural environment is an extension of the classroom. And so, no, I'm not likely to put up any sort of confining fencing.
Okay. Great. Well, if there are no more questions from the board, I think I'd like to open it up to questions and comments from anyone else who may be in the room with us virtually. So, must find my statement to invite public comment. It's important to us that you have a platform for your questions and comments during this meeting. Therefore, to ask questions and make a public comment during tonight's virtual meeting, you must have registered and joined via GoToWebinar, where you'll now have the ability to submit your questions or comments through the questions options in your control panel, or you can use the raise your hand option to be allowed to speak. For those of you who have joined via telephone who would like to ask a question or make a comment, you are now welcome to unmute your phone. We ask only that you have your phone unmuted while you're asking your question, and please mute when you are no longer live. You can unmute your phone by pushing *6. Please state your name and address for the record, and when acknowledged, you can then state your question or comment. And when you're done, you can mute again by pushing *6. And as with any public hearing, we ask that you be respectful of the board members and the other residents who are making their comments by patiently and quietly waiting your turn. Thank you. So Jen, do we have other participants in the room with us?
We do have many participants. I see a couple of questions. Mr. Murkowski, Murawski.
Yeah, Mr. Murawski. This is Stephen Murawski of 15 Night Way, a direct abutter of 19 Night Way. My original question was in response to the building designer actually providing plans for the buildings that are similarly designed. One of my concerns or comments about the design was similar to Michael McClanahan's, was that it looked like a garage. And the comment was that this is a common design now. My other concern and comment is, as a direct abutter, the comment from most of the people participating in this was that there is a larger plan for a larger facility, not just the smaller facility that is considered right now. So why aren't we considering the larger plans down the road? The easement that sits on my property and then also sits on the White's property next door is a dirt road. There is no pavement. It goes up an incline and is actually pretty tiny. It might be 24 feet. I don't know if it's the full 50 feet of the easement or not. I don't go out there and measure it, but it is currently used by the Knights. It is currently used by other people going in and out of that property constantly. So I'm not necessarily sure I see how it doesn't exist, or a problem doesn't exist for queuing down to our street. We have had lots of different things these days with the pandemic, where we've had parades and through parades and gatherings for families to do drive-bys. It is queued on our street that is much smaller for 30 people. And then now the proposed 200. So I can't believe that there's any way to rectify that. There is a large island in the middle of that cul-de-sac. There's also a fire hydrant. And there's a lot of different things that are concerning to me within all of the information that was provided tonight by FOD. One of the other things, there is no light at all on that property. One of the things that I thought was interesting was relocating the pole that brings in the power. There's no light on that pole. There's talk about abating and considering light pollution, I guess. There's no light now. So any light added to either side of that driveway, west or east, north or south, adds additional light down here that doesn't exist. Additional parking slots, bringing cars in. That's additional light pollution that will go right through now that all the trees have been removed from the property that actually divided the Knights property or 19 Knight Way and the end of the cul-de-sac. So I have a lot of concerns as the rest of the people. I will respectfully turn it back over to the rest of the group.
Thank you. So Jen, I'm going to leave it to you to call on people since I really can't see who's
Mr.
out there
Faraz?
wishing to speak.
Is Mr. Faraz with us? Okay, we'll come back to you. How about Kristen Morawski?
Oh, hi. Yes. Okay, I'm getting all kinds of feedback, sorry. My original question was to Mr. Smalley when he said that this follows other maker spaces. I would like to know if he has examples of other maker spaces that have these big, large garage doors. That seemed a little odd to me. I'm also very concerned about the fact that now there's going to be more cars coming in through the neighborhood. I'm a little confused about why we're discussing a small space when it's been very clear that there's been a lot of discussion like, oh, this is going to be, I'll get to that when it's the larger space. I'll get to the queuing up when there's the larger school. I'll get to a roundabout when there's the larger school. It feels like this is just an establishment to make a larger school. So I'm confused as to why we're even here tonight discussing this small maker space that doesn't have a plan for queuing, doesn't have a plan for any of that. And instead they're saying, oh, we'll come up with a plan for that when there's the bigger school. There seems to be no plan for this small maker space. This seems to be just an establishment of, we want to get a foothold here with a large space that has large garage doors and does not seem to plan for how there would be an in and out for what maybe they're trying to propose is going to be a space, because there is no inlet, there's no roundabout, there's nothing that allows this space to be accessible and bring people in and out. So those were my questions. Thank you.
And thank you. We are as a board going to discuss and make a decision on the smaller site plan that was on the proposal that's in front of us now. And any decision on the larger building will have to take place at a future time when that's the proposal they put in front of us.
It sounds like your question reaches to a concept called piecemealing, which is where if a party seeks, permission to do a project, they can't simply divide the project into several small pieces. If they are contemplating the entire project and the associated impacts, they should present them all together. But here, it doesn't appear that the makerspace would increase the number of students necessarily, or would increase the amount of traffic as a necessity. There's an existing dwelling, which I guess controls the number of people who are on site, whereas the makerspace is them going back and forth for particular types of classroom activities. So the future building might increase the overall capacity of the project, but I don't know if what we have before us tonight would change the capacity that they're asking for, which I think is what you were reaching for with that second building. Correct me if I'm wrong.
And I appreciate that the applicant's being transparent about the things they're thinking about, in addition to maybe what they have in the fully baked plan in front of us right now.
Do we have Mr. Diebold?
Yeah, here, we're here. My question is about the extent of the traffic study. It sounds like the traffic study analyzed the impact of the 50-foot easement on backing up onto Knights Way. And one of my questions is, when classes are discharged, has the traffic study considered the possible impact of queuing up at the intersections of Justin Drive and Balcom Street, where Balcom intersects with Jewel and Justin at the same place, and the impact of drivers that will seek to avoid that backup by exiting onto Balcom Street through via Clare Avenue.
Do you want to respond to that? Would the applicant like to respond to that?
Yes, I'll respond to that. I did say when I was describing the traffic study that not only does it address the issue of the impact on the easement that was at issue, it also went further and analyzed the impact on the public ways within the subdivision, and specifically the intersection of Knight Way with the Balcom Street. That's all addressed. And I think that's something that traffic engineers have to do anyways as part of a traffic study. They don't just look at the one little spot you focus them on. They look at the other streets that are impacted. And yes, that is addressed in detail. And again, what's assumed there is the facility, the larger facility, is fully built, and it's 100% enrollment, and we're a long way from that.
To be clear, Knight Street does not intersect with Balcom Street. Knight Street leads to Justin Drive,
Right.
that intersects with Balcom Street.
That's correct.
And is there any provisions in the traffic study for the installation of a traffic light at that intersection?
No, there are not. And the traffic engineer, concluded that it doesn't even come close to justifying. This is with full enrollment in the larger facility. We're justifying a traffic light at that location. And even if it did, that would have to be vetted and approved by the State Mass Department Highways, State Department Highways.
And that approval process would occur after the building is built and operational?
Yes, and again, I'm referring to the larger building shown as future building on the property, for which no plans have been submitted other than the sketch that you see here.
Thank you.
Is Nicole Mullen with us?
This is her husband. So I just want to raise, Joe Mullen here, 3 Knight Way, right on the corner of Justin and Knight Way. Obviously, we have a number of concerns. I just want to talk about 3 major points that, really, I think are going to impact our community, our, neighborhood, so on and so forth. But number 1, we have a school bus stop that's right on the corner of Justin and Knight Way. Number 1, safety for our children. Obviously, there's 3 different rounds of pickups, so there's constant, traffic going in and out of our road. There's going to be a lot of children that are going to be at risk. Number 1. Number 2, the width of the street is not, meeting the requirement, especially in the winter when it's snowy, when there's a ton of snow all over the place. It's going to make it very difficult for our kids to actually get to the bus stop safely. The other thing is the subdivision. There's a requirement by the subdivision to have 2 sidewalks. There is not 2 sidewalks on both sides. raises a huge flag again for the children's safety. And I think that, overall it's going to jeopardize the community and the neighborhood that we all have here and really truly enjoy. And my last comment is, I understand that the thought process behind the school, it's a great concept, and I understand that you guys want to have, more of a nature-based thing. But when you're talking about putting a 17,000 square foot building in a residential community like this, R1, I mean, you're totally ruining the integrity of the space and the natural habitat back there. So that's all I have to say, and I appreciate everyone's time today.
This is Nicole Mullen, and as far as the width of the street goes, the street width is 25 feet wide. There's absolutely no way that 2 rows of cars can go in and out safely of the neighborhood past all of our houses, especially when there's 2 huge snowbanks on each side. There's maybe room for 1.5 cars, but definitely not 2-way traffic. And again, going back to the sidewalks, we have to walk in the street to get to the bus stop. And you're putting me as a mother in a really tough position where it's basically going to force me to have my children walk in the middle of the road in a 25-foot wide street with 2 huge snowbanks. That to me poses a huge safety risk to my children. And I don't think that it is feasible.
Thank you.
Yeah, the presence or absence of sidewalks is definitely something that is a recurring question whenever we look at site plans for developments, be they housing developments or special use permits. So we definitely hear you on that issue. We also have to look at whether the project, the proponent of the project, can meaningfully put that in their budget, and so we try and balance those interests.
Thank you.
Is Mr. Maynard with us?
Go ahead.
Yes, go ahead. Hello?
Yep, name and address for the record.
John Maynard, 164 Balcom Street.
Okay.
We live on Balcom Street with Justin and Claire Street at basically equidistance from where we live. In looking at the plan that's proposed, I think that the planning board has a duty as the permitting party to consider the entire project, not just carving out the small area where the initial building is. If that was the only thing was going to be built on that land and there was no bigger building or buildings proposed in the future, then I think the board would be able to consider the plan to submit it. However, the stated purpose is that the smaller building is going to be built first, and that the 17,000 square foot building and another outbuilding is going to be done later. I believe that the planning board has a duty to look at the entire project, despite what council says, because eventually any type of new building beyond where the proposed building tonight would be placed, the parties are going to have to redo probably most of the roads and the access points. I think there's going to be a question on fire safety, all of this and that. So the entire project should be looked at, not just this one specific carve-out building. Thank you.
I appreciate your thought, and the board really only can consider and make a decision on the proposal that's in front of us and make sure that it works on its own, is internally consistent, works on its own.
Right. So the operative question, like we had mentioned when a similar public question like this came up, is will the outbuilding impact traffic onto the site by increasing it, or are we simply looking at the road alignment for its efficiency as opposed to whether it's going to accommodate future traffic? Because future traffic without an increase in the number of people on site is something we don't have enough information to decide on right now.
I don't think I heard you well enough, Adrian, to understand your question. Can you rephrase that?
So we're looking at the shed for, I guess, STEM projects, but that doesn't increase the total number of students that the facility would have. So again, we've got a member of the public saying we should look at the whole project, including a planned future building for which we don't have all the information. But the impacts of that future building can be evaluated when that building is brought before us. It looks like the STEM building isn't going to change the net amount of traffic onto the site, unless I'm misunderstanding the purpose of this building.
Do you want to respond to that, Attorney Lanza or Emily?
I'll respond. The makerspace is most definitely going to increase traffic onto the site.
Okay.
Rather small in magnitude. And again, we don't have an application for the future building. Who knows what the future is going to bring? We'd like to think it's going to be constructed soon. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. That's really not, as the chair said, something that can be considered in the context of the current application. And we will provide, as I stated, a traffic study, a vehicle queuing study for the future building at full capacity, and also a queuing study that was done at the Creedy Street facility where the current operation is going on. And I believe the maximum enrollee count there is 90, but the actual is more like 65 or 70. Ms. Miller can correct me if I'm wrong. She's nodding her head. So we'll provide lots of information about that. We did hear the board's concerns tonight about circulation for pickup and drop off, and we're going to be discussing and likely submitting a revised plan showing a loop driveway to facilitate that pickup and drop off. I realize that's more of an answer than you're looking for, but why not?
Thank you.
Do we have Cynthia Kavanaugh with us?
Yes, I'm here. I've just been listening. I hadn't had an opportunity to understand all that was going on much before this evening. So I'm just trying to absorb what the issues are, what the board is being asked to look at this evening and why. Trying to understand what's being tabled perhaps for a later date. And so I don't know that I have a specific question. I know I'm concerned not only about the traffic and the safety of the people who live at the end of Knight's Way. I live on 113 Balcom Street. I'm also concerned about traffic. And in the future, the study has to go beyond even our smaller streets here. But when you try to get off of Balcom Street out to Otis and onto School Street, it's very curvy, it's very small. Traffic is very heavy coming from up by Mansfield Crossing or coming up the other way from Norton. It just gets heavier and heavier. And when you add hundreds of cars in there a couple of times a day, it's just going to be a nightmare. So I'm just, for right now, thank you for listening to me. The ideas on the school and the type of school are wonderful. I think I agree what other people have said. I'm sorry, it's just not the right place for it. And so it's a difficult decision for everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Is Karen Pertel with us?
Yes, I am. My name is Karen Patel. I live at 3 North White Pine Lane. I'm in a butter to the property. And essentially, you know, like a lot of the other abutters have brought up, we do feel like this is going to be detrimental to our neighborhood. Even with the smaller building having, you know, 60 round trip cars coming in and out of our small neighborhood that's already narrow. I know that the Mullins mentioned the snow concerns, but we also have, you know, several times throughout the year, you know, landscape trucks that tend to block a whole half of the road. And those happen pretty frequently, you know, as no one's on the same schedule. So that would also be a concern. Clearly with the children that are in the neighborhood, there are lots of young kids. There's a lot of bike riding. Those kids also, you know, as the Mullins mentioned, there are several stops for the buses, and those are, you know, a concern because I'm guessing the school times will be very similar. So there'll be a lot of traffic. And, you know, again, we are not necessarily opposed to, you know, the concept of a school. We just do not believe that this neighborhood is equipped to handle it. We do not believe that this is the right place and location to put a school in. And especially when you talk about the future building, that will be especially detrimental to the neighborhood, and the traffic is a huge concern. Thank you.
I see Emily wants to respond to that.
I just want to mention one thing that I have on numerous occasions, so that the board members know, offered to the neighborhood to schedule my pickup and drop off times and my school schedule around the bus's schedule, to which I have gotten no response or this. So I have made an effort to try to be a good neighbor and compromise and bend and flex and do, you know, what I can. So that offer is still out there should somebody or the neighborhood choose to take me up on it.
Thank you.
Did Mrs. Murowski have additional questions?
Oh, I'm sorry, I did. Do you want me to read all the questions I wrote? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Why don't you go ahead with your questions?
Okay. One, I feel Mr. Smalley did not answer my question previously about other maker spaces with large garage doors. I also wondered if there was a particular traffic study for this makerspace, since it's been made clear to me that we are only discussing this one space. So I wondered what the traffic study was for this particular space. I also wondered what the hours are for the makerspace. And I'm also confused because I understood that this, I think I understood from previous comments that this was said to be an adjunct to the current school that's on Creedon Street. So I'm confused. Will students be bused from Creedon Street to this space back and forth? I'd like to know what those hours are, or if this is considered to be a separate school. And is this just the STEM part of that school, or do kids come to this makerspace for the STEM programming only? I'd like to know how and when this is only the STEM part of their programming. I just would like to know what those hours are, how this is an adjunct, and what the plan is. Thank you.
Would you like to respond to that at this time or later?
I think Ms. Miller is the most knowledgeable to respond to that, and whether it's now or later, I'll leave that up to her.
I'll reply to it later because, you know, approval will determine the schedule and, you know, compromising hopefully with the
Right.
neighbor.
No, and tonight we want to make sure we get all the questions out on the table when you can. You can respond.
Nobody's
after
going to be,
tonight.
it will be classroom space. There will be a drop off. There will be a pickup, period. So.
Other questions?
Mr. Frenette, do you have a question? How about Mr. Kavanaugh?
Hi, this is Bob Kavanaugh, 15 Justin Drive. I've been involved with this since 2007. And I just want to say, never once have I ever heard Emily Miller ever reach out to me to try to discuss her school. She invited us to her school in 2007. The entire neighborhood informed to her that we're all opposed to it. I just want to go on and say that I'm very concerned about the volume of traffic, which was testified in court by their traffic school consultant to be in excess of 600 vehicle trips a day. This is talking about the larger building, which we all know is the ultimate goal. That excludes traffic, staff, and delivery vehicles. We also, their traffic consultants, because I've read the transcripts of the court, on cross-examination, admitted to having no experience with this type of facility. But anyway, 600 cars a day would overwhelm my South Street. Even these 30 cars a day will be too much for Justin Drive, which is only about 250, 300 yards long. During the winter of 2015, we had many blizzards. The snow was piled 6 feet high on both sides of the street leading to the proposed location. I took my car and parked it in various spots leading up to the cul-de-sac and took pictures. And each picture, which I can provide, shows that the streets are only plowed such that there's 1.5 car widths to get through. My car was parked as close as it could be to the snowdrift, and there's maybe 4 feet on the other side. I'm very concerned that in a similar situation, emergency vehicles won't be able to get to my house to potentially save a life due to the gridlock caused by the schools queuing up, blocking the streets during the drop-off and pickups. Approving this school would be tantamount to the town, Mansfield, relocating my home from a tiny, quiet neighborhood and dropping it right on Route 106, which is exactly where I would never have purchased a home when I was looking for a place to raise my family. So I respectfully ask that any and all requests by Hands-On Montessori to build at the end of this subdivision be declined. I also feel that sitting in traffic, stop and go traffic to get to or from my home would have a negative effect on my family's quality of life. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Frenette? Okay, Mr. Kaluzdian?
Thank you. I agree with everything that everyone has said tonight about the number of cars being completely inappropriate for a small neighborhood and the risks that that number of cars would have on the children in the neighborhood. When you actually see the streets in the neighborhood, I think you get a good sense of how really small it is and how overwhelming that number of cars, even for the smaller building. When you look at the size of the bigger building, it becomes absolutely crazy to think that many cars will come down the street and not pose a risk to the health and safety of the neighborhood. But in terms of tonight's proposal, there were so many questions that couldn't be answered, and that's clearly because this is obviously an end run to begin building on the property. So those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Mr. Brolin?
I'm muted now.
Jay Brolin, 7 Claire Ave. First question I have is this by right, the site plan that's in front of us? I could understand, I'm just still a little lost on how R1 supports having a school in there.
Yeah, I can respond to that. It is allowed use by right in R1 zone. And if I may, the land court has decided that the easement access is adequate and acceptable. So it's an allowed use here, but the site plan allows us to get into some of the questions of, what are the issues they have to navigate around to make it really work. And listening to all those concerns is important because it'll inform their plan. And it'll inform the plan of the town too. For example, snow plowing prioritization of that street might have to change.
But having said that, this is part of a larger common plan of development. Somebody used the term piecemeal beforehand. Isn't it the obligation of the planning board to look? I know that you're looking at this site plan, but don't you have to look at it in the context of the larger common plan of development?
I don't really have a response to that. Does anyone else have a response?
Sure. I was the person who brought the term piecemealing up. Though typically that's used in, an environmental law context or, larger projects when a developer is intentionally subdividing the steps of the project. So if you've got 4 phases in mind, but you think your hurdle for permitting purposes might be with phase 3, you would try and pitch phases 1 and 2 with the necessary later phases still in mind. But what I had mentioned when I brought that up was, from what we had seen, I was not necessarily convinced that the larger building was necessary if you're doing this other accessory structure, the maker space. But I could be convinced otherwise, and I think if you wanted to talk about whether maker space and the potential secondary larger building are necessarily tied together, that may be something for Mr. Lanza to speak on. If the shed, the stem shed or what have you were approved, but a later building was put through a harder look for traffic impacts, would that satisfy the neighborhood that the traffic impacts were still being examined? Forgive me. Yeah.
Those are good questions.
And I've got other environmental, thank you very much for that, the environmental concerns. And again, I understand that the board can only look at what's in front of them as part of the site plan, but when the plan is a portion of something else that admittedly by the drawing and by the proponent have been put out there, I would believe there's an obligation to consider those prior to approving just this site plan, since admittedly it is part of a larger common plan of development.
Mr. Lanza, do you have any thoughts?
I have no response to that. I've responded several times, and I don't think it's necessary to respond again.
Do we have additional individuals in the room who'd like to speak, Jen?
This is Cynthia Kavanaugh here again. There was a picture earlier of the makerspace, wasn't there? I mean, the
Yes.
it almost looks like it would be a future garage. Just an observation, that's all. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, the was described as being designed to be extremely flexible for future uses.
Right, but maybe, again, it does feel like it is piecemeal. It's just piece by piece, put a little here, a little there. Difficult situation here it is. Again, for everybody who's in the neighborhood, and to think for, 600 or 700 cars, and it's not just the people who live in this quiet little neighborhood where their kids play with these very narrow streets and all. it continues on to the other streets all around here and then getting back onto the main roads. And so that needs to be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, safety is very important and access is very important to the school too.
Mr. Frenette, do you have a question? Mr. Faraz, do you have a question? Mr. Weiner?
Good evening. Thank you. This is Jeff Weiner. I live at 1 North White Pine, so I am in a abutter as well. And, thank you very much for your time. I'm also here to strongly oppose building the school in our quiet, beautiful little neighborhood at the end of a cul-de-sac. Our neighborhood's filled with children of all ages. They ride bikes, they play sports. They too enjoy the outdoors, and everybody feels really safe doing that. Bringing any place of business into a small residential neighborhood will cause significant disruption, major safety issues that we should not have to be concerned with. A residential area that epitomizes what town of Mansfield is about is right here in our neighborhood. A family-friendly, amazing place to raise children that feel safe going outside, a neighborhood that has drawn me and others to this great town, a neighborhood that currently sees very little traffic. And whether you're talking about the step one here of the multi-step process that clearly they're doing here, or the full thing, it's just way too much traffic and safety concerns for our children. The committee, rightly so, had significant concerns earlier this evening about a dog kennel. We should have even more concerns about the safety of our children and the disruption of our neighborhood here as well. So thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Mr. Parada? Ms. Purtell? Carrie Jukes? Okay. Mark La Rochelle? Patrick Marr?
Hi, this is Patrick Marr from 259 Otis Street. Live in the area. And two questions, I guess. One, I know, I think, this concept of piecemealing got brought up a couple of times. And, one thing that I think was interesting to me, and I know, Adrian, you mentioned it's something that you'd, I think, consider further if folks thought about it perhaps in a different context, but it doesn't strike me as an economically viable plan without the larger building down the line. And so I think to look at it only in the structure of like, well, we can only narrowly look at this building constructed as it is here, and we can't possibly look to see if these other things may happen down the line. It just is, strikes me as odd because ultimately this is a commercial enterprise. It is an enterprise that is designed to generate income and not serve as a residence being put into a residential area. And to say, well, we can only look at this narrow case where it's designed to be very small. It can only support, I guess 20 students, the tuition of which is barely going to be enough to support instruction at the site, let alone, the other costs of operating the site, particularly with the amount of open space that needs to get cleared in inclement weather and things like that, the amount of maintenance and upkeep that needs to occur to it. So I think that over the long term, it strikes me as the only viable way that this is economically feasible is that the larger building is built. And so to only look at it from a planning perspective of focus in on this narrow building strikes me as a position that the board shouldn't find itself in, number one. And number two, I guess, as a point of clarification as far as open meeting law goes, I know, I think Mr. Smalley shared a document on his screen earlier that I hope gets entered into the public record. I wasn't able to join the meeting, I don't think, until after it was already shared, but I do see that the session is being recorded. So hopefully somebody has a copy of that we would all like to see. With that, I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And that's a really good thing you brought up. Access to the submissions, they're available at the planning department. You can call and ask to find out whether they're online or how you can view them, because they are public record and available for you to view.
This is Justin Parada. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry I missed when I was called on before. So I'm an attorney. I represent several homeowners in the neighborhood. I wrote a letter to the board that I would ask be put in the file. Our position is that despite the Dover protection here, that this board really shouldn't act until the ZBA acts. This is a non-conforming lot as to both frontage and a lack of public access. A private easement doesn't satisfy the bylaw, and therefore the ZBA should give a Section 6 finding before anything else happens here for an expansion of a non-conforming lot. And, although Dover may offer some protection, because this is a dual use, there'll be a residence and a school, even the smaller school. There's not really case law supporting that, the notion that a Section 6 finding isn't required in that instance. So I would just posit that this board should table this until the ZBA acts. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on that the board might have.
Is there currently a hearing scheduled for the ZBA?
I'd like to respond, if I could, Madam Chairman.
Please do.
There is no application or anything pending before the Zoning Board of Appeals. The issue of whether or not a Section 6 finding is required was addressed squarely in the first land court case decided under the name of Ellsworth versus the town of Mansfield. The Judge Long squarely addressed the issue and said it is not required. The town of Mansfield was a party in that case. There was no appeal. That issue is decided at this point. Over.
Fair enough. I would just respond that my clients were not parties to that case. I also think Judge Long's decision was fairly limited. He didn't address the public versus private access question. The definition of a lot under the Mansfield bylaw requires that it have access over a public right-of-way or a street, which is defined as a public thoroughfare. Here, there's only a private easement. And my client's position, which is obviously is not the town of Mansfield, is that that's sufficient.
Again, Madam Chairman, those issues were squarely addressed by the land court. And the decision, the first decision wasn't appealed. The second decision concerning the adequacy of the easement was appealed to the Mass Appeals Court. The Mass Appeals Court upheld the land court. So those issues are decided. The law is clear on those issues at this point.
Thank you. Yeah, the land court does make it a little simpler for us by having decided a few of these issues for us.
It's a shame we had to go there 3 times, and we really hope we don't have to go there a 4th time.
Yeah, well, I would, again, I don't disagree that the town was a party and those issues may have been determined vis-a-vis the town, but of course, the judgment's only binding on people who were parties to the case or entities that were parties to the case. So I understand to some degree what this board can do is limited, but you know, my clients and I still feel the ZBA should act here at some point. That may or may not happen via what this board decides, but that's our position.
Thank you. I know it's getting late, and I'd certainly hope that we could plow through and hear all of the comments in one night. I don't know how realistic that is, how many more we have in the queue, Jen.
We have 3 hands raised and several question marks, along with a couple of additional questions. We have several more questions.
Yeah. This is gonna take more than one night because my ability to make decisions is fading here. But I would like to try to push through and get a few more of the questions on the record because I think it really helps the applicant to have heard all the questions sooner rather than later. So let's see if we can get a few more in. And then we'll look for another date to continue this.
Yeah, we're gonna have to, Beth, because we don't have those binders that they said that they dropped off either. So I'd like to pick one up.
Yeah.
I asked Jennifer to confirm that everything I dropped off on the 2nd and be distributed to everybody was in fact received, and I did get confirmation of that.
Well, I didn't get a copy, so I don't know if anybody else.
Yeah, we
did.
might have to do some double checking and make sure everybody on the board
Can we get
has everything.
But get a copy of the order from the most recent land court cases.
We did.
Emailed to
Yes,
us.
we did.
Okay, I must have missed that.
There were a lot of attachments. You will
Oh,
be
did you send
forgiven.
that book out? Okay.
Have time to catch up and read them.
Shall we get a few more questions?
Yes, let's get a few more
Yeah,
in.
true.
Okay.
Then we'll find a date to continue.
Mr. Rosemark.
Good evening. My name is Rick Rosemark. I live at 9 North White Pine Lane. I won't keep you because I agree with a lot of things that the Moraskis, the Mullins, the Mr. Maynard, Cynthia Kavanaugh, trying to think who else, Bob Kavanaugh, Jay Brolin said. We are extremely opposed to the building of the Montessori school in West Mansfield. We don't feel it's the right place for it. I'm a resident, a taxpayer, and a butter, and a townie. We pay over $15,000 a year in property taxes. This school will be a nonprofit. It won't be paying anything. It will be using the taxpayers' resources. There's a lot of safety issues. There's a sidewalk on Balcom Street. It runs from Otis Street to across from the John Berry School. Sorry, that's the YMCA. It's where I went to first, second, and third grade. It was the John Berry School. There's a sidewalk that comes down Clare. It turns on North White Pine, and it just ends. With the pandemic, our neighborhood's seen a number of birthday parades. Cars at stop signs were preventing homeowners from getting in and out of their driveways. The cul-de-sacs were clogged. People had to back out in one situation, and this is the cul-de-sac on Night where the proposed school is. I know I don't need to tell you guys about zoning, but I've seen some social media on the topic, and my heart goes out to the unhappy neighbors of the school's current location. The Hands-On Montessori School at 12 Credence Street is zoned, I believe it's PBD, Planned Business District. The proposed location is not R3 high density. It's not R2 medium density. It's R1, which is a natural resources scenic residential. The original permitting for the homes in the subdivision is for residential dwellings. And there were even covenants in the beginning. for things like the size of the home, the vegetation that had to be on the property, and the permitted pets, i.e. domestic pets, cats and dogs. This is where my family and I have chose to build our dream house. And this is not where a school with that traffic belongs. People mentioned the snow and the traffic. Snow on a trash recycle day is something that you guys really need to take a look at, because it's unpassable. A landscaping truck when a school bus, it's unpassable. And it bothers me, and I don't want to insult Emily, but it really bothers me how we're dancing around this large building. There was a gentleman from Otis Street that mentioned it's not financially feasible. It's not. I don't know why it's on the plan. I don't know why we're dancing around this. And you guys have addressed it. We have some very intelligent board members that are involved with construction and real estate. And it really bothers me that it's not being focused on, because that's the whole point.
So the decision in Ellsworth versus Town of Mansfield has come up a couple of times. That was what we were just asking about. Even back in 2011, there may have been a contemplated 17,000 foot, 160 child project. Right now, we are not deciding whether or not that use is appropriate use. We're not deciding whether or not having a residence and a school on the same parcel is appropriate. We're not deciding whether or not we have a requirement. What we're looking at is a particular site plan modification they're bringing in, which is just, I guess, this accessory building that would be for STEM purposes. If later on they flesh out the full plan for some later larger structure that would increase the number of people on the parcel, that would require, I think, necessarily the traffic study that you're demanding, and it could still be completely stopped at that point in time. When we have a traffic study, we have something that will increase the headcount. We'll be in a better position to make a determination about the impact of that. But it doesn't look like this particular request tonight impacts the traffic unless they come in with some sort of a busing plan for bringing kids to this facility. So we do risk a creep of what we're being asked to decide.
Thank you, Adrian. Okay, one last comment for the night. What do we have, Jen?
Mr. Stein?
I'm Stefan to North White Pine Lane, and I will be pretty quick. This is pretty late. I agree with everything everybody have said so far. I also heard what the board's position is. You can only act on what you have in front of you. But my concern is the implication it might have. The big plan and the implication it might have on our neighborhood is not considered. Nothing in life is that black and white that you can say, well, I can only think of this, but not that. And I was really urged the board to come up with a way to really see the bigger picture and the impact it might have on our neighborhood, as explained, in terms of quality of life, property value, safety, children, and so forth. And that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we've had a lot of comments, a lot to think about. A lot of people stayed up late to participate, and we really appreciate both the applicant and the public's effort to participate in this late hour. What do we have for a date to continue this on another night?
We can do this after the Ware Street public hearing on January 27th. Otherwise, we're looking at February 10th.
I would love to not do this at the same night as Ware Street. Again, that. I don't know if February 10th is acceptable to the applicant, but that I'd like them to be able to go first in the evening.
Well, if we can be first in line on the 10th, we'll take it. There's not a lot of difference between the 10th and the 27th. That's a week, so.
Let's do that. Then you'll get an earlier start. And
say 7:15 on February 10th.
February 10th.
Sounds good.
Applicant
Okay.
consensus for continuance.
You have a
Motion?
motion to continue?
Before we go, I just like to let you know that I've got a video of what a 15-car procession going down my street looks like when someone's passed away very close to the entrance of a facility this past summer. Those 15 cars procession stopped and all the way down my street. If you'd like to see a video of it, I'll be glad to send it to you. So you can get
Who's
an idea.
speaking?
Bob Kavanaugh.
Bob
So you can
Kavanaugh,
get an
thank you.
Yeah, so
If
you,
you,
so you can get an
if you
idea
want
of what the
something to,
30.
if you want to share
I'm sorry, go
something,
ahead.
send it to Jen at the planning office.
Okay, I will do that. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, so we have, I think Mike was making a motion to continue to February 10th at 7:15.
Correct.
Correct. We have a second. From Joe. Okay. Find my list of people here. Adrian,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Ralph,
You might want to bed.
I think we still get enough votes to continue. Sharon?
Aye.
Diana?
Aye.
Mike Feck?
Yes.
Michael McClanahan?
Yes.
I also vote aye. And I think that's everyone. Give you one last chance, Ralph, if you're there and just didn't unmute. Okay.
Thank you to the board for your time.
Thank you for hearing us, and everybody enjoy the holidays, and let's hope that vaccine is available by the time this year resumes.
Yes, no, I do it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry how
Thank you.
virtual meetings slow everything down. It makes it harder, but thank you very much for your patience.
Good night.
Thank you all.
Great. Well, it's late. I don't know if
Staying
any
on-
has any quick around the table before we sign off.
Yep,
think we're-
I'm all set.
All
How about
set.
How about a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, there's the McClanahan motion. Excellent. Great. We have to vote on that, don't we?
Yes.
Do we have to vote on that?
Yeah.
We have to vote on that.
Yeah.
Okay, Adrian,
Aye.
Joe,
Yes.
Sharon,
Aye.
Diana,
Yes.
Mike Feck,
Yes.
Michael McClanahan,
Yep.
Ralph?
In bed.
On bed.
Hey, we all need to go to bed. I just yesterday had more than a 24-hour